Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. Ben, Alonzo, Christy, and Matt. The documentary Weiner about Anthony Weiner out, I think, last week, you say? Last Friday.
Premiered at Sundance this year.
Premiered at about the rise and fall and rise and fall again of New York politician Anthony Weiner, Matt.
So in 2011, Anthony Weiner left the House of Representatives after a sexting scandal, and 2 years later, he mounts a mayoral campaign and invites a documentary crew to be right there with the campaign. They've got great access, and they follow this, what starts out as a very successful campaign, and he's far and away the front runner, and the cameras are there to capture it. And then there's more sex scandal that comes up, and the campaign falls apart, and the cameras are still right there. It's fascinating. Let's watch a clip.
Today, I am announcing my resignation from Congress.
The punchline is true about me. I did the dumb thing, but I did a lot of good things too. Running for mayor was the straightest line to clean up the mess that I had made.
This is Anthony Weiner calling. Yes, I'm not Anthony Weiner, the one running for mayor.
Why do you think you deserve the second chance?
Why do you want to answer?
I'm giving you the answer.
I thought you were thinking about it. I thought
No,
you were
I'm
trying
talking
to think.
words.
What I'm going to try to talk about is the issues facing New York City.
Are more women going to come home?
Just a quick optics thing, you will look happy.
Don't push up, Anthony. Show it to me again. Oh my God.
I can't believe I gave the press the finger.
At the end of the movie, when, spoiler, he has lost the mayoral primary, you hear the director off camera say, "Why are you letting me film this?" And that's a great question because, they have just been right up there all along, and you've just seen one disaster after another, and like his family life kind of, taking a hit on all this, and just so much vulnerability. And given how managed the news and celebrity are now, it's amazing to get this sort of fly on the wall of like this disintegration.
I think he can't help himself. I think he's just such a rampant narcissist. He has to have the camera there all the time, no matter what. And even in the midst of turmoil, it's comforting to know that it's being documented. You know?
What I thought was really fascinating is how he's aware of that. Is that there's, yes, there's some times where he pushes back on the camera crew. Like there's the fly in the wall discussion that he has.
Right.
I thought was really funny. Right, but then there's a moment like towards the end of the film, and you start to see some glimmers of self-awareness. And there's some points where he's saying, maybe part of what makes a politician is that need for attention. And he's like, I need that attention. And there's a little bit of that. And you realize that this is a guy, as much as he may be playing for the camera, he at least says that he knows that he's just pouring gas on the fire.
I didn't, the reason why, we all are going to give it very high scores, and it's really worth seeing, no question. But the reason why I think surprisingly, I came in as the low person here, is because I didn't get that. It's through no fault of the filmmakers at all. But ultimately, he is not yet, at least at the stage that this was shot, prepared for the real sort of introspection and self-examination that someone in his life could unquestionably benefit from, and that we would benefit from seeing. Like he has there's no question.
I think there's a little bit to that.
There's a little bit, but it's crying out, he's not quite ready. Like that's it, the crew was there, and there's also clearly a documentary done, an interview done afterwards, included in it. Like, okay, you've lost the mayoral race, the scandal came back, it got you again. And he is not prepared to sit for that and offer any sort of interesting introspection. And I think the film, as a result, suffers from being truly great to just pretty great.
It's fascinating from a fly-on-the-wall perspective, and but it's very sad. It's kind of tragic because you look at how beloved he was in this city. You see him marching in the gay pride parade, you see him marching in the Puerto Rican Day parade, and this is even after the first round of scandal. And people love him, and they actively embrace him, and they want to forgive. Like New Yorkers want to embrace him all over again and forgive him. And you know that he cares deeply. You see him on the floor of the House, like arguing, like veins in his neck bulging out. The issues he cares about, he cares passionately about, and he's a bulldog. He could have done so much great work.
That's right.
That's the.
He would have been the mayor of New York.
He was going
to be the mayor.
He could accomplish amazing things if he weren't tripping on his own dick.
What's amazing, and I think that the movie does a good job of showing this, is there's that early debate where he calls that other guy grandpa, right? Like the debate's over and the camera catches him.
Another candidate.
Right,
yeah.
another candidate, and he's kind of in his face and he's talking smack, and he's a really good smack talker. He's really good at it.
Because
right?
it's also at that point, it's this ugly self-righteousness of
Right.
the other candidate. And you're,
Right.
in that side, you're like, I like the guy. This is when you're rooting for Anthony.
Right, and Weiner is a good fighter. He fights really well, and he's passionate, and he's charismatic, and those flaws that make him successful on the House floor, and let him debate well, are the same things that that's his downfall. Like that's the stuff you see later in the film. Like as things start to fall apart, as we get to our later kind of reveal of there's this other scandal that no, it wasn't just the ongoing thing. It's like this is more current, and he's still doing it, and it all starts to fall apart. He goes on The Last Word.
Oh, Lawrence O'Donnell,
right?
God.
He can't help himself.
And he can't help himself. And you kind of want to say like, dude, what do you stop? And then there's the scene
then the other
in
scene,
the
in the
bakery, right?
Yeah.
Where
Oh, God,
now
that
granted, we find out, and this gets covered on The Daily Show, like he
The
was
guy had it
provoked.
coming.
The guy in the bakery's a bigot.
The guy, right?
Yeah.
He was provoked, but still, like
He can't just
he
walk
can't-
away. He
Yeah,
can't.
just walk away.
He was the least that bulldog mentality, that thing that made him stand out to Democrats, to progressives, for being a rare progressive who would be like, no,
And there's
no,
a clip
I'm
of
tougher
Cenk,
than you.
right?
We're tougher than you.
And there's a clip of Cenk
Totally,
early on
yeah.
reacting
we were
to
big.
that.
We were
We
huge.
forgot to
Anthony
mention him in Money Monster, but
Yeah,
yes,
we
he's
were
in this.
Cenk's a multimedia star.
huge Anthony Weiner cheerleaders because he was a fighter. And yeah, no question, the things when people would say, he's unpleasant, and you'd be like, yeah, I get, okay.
Yeah, right,
No,
fine.
you guys are all unpleasant. I'll take, I'd like an unpleasant guy on
my side, yeah.
Right. So we loved that, but that made him that temperament made him particularly ill-suited to handle the scandal the second time around.
Right.
Like where that worked in Congress to some extent, that did not work with the Lawrence O'Donnell interview or in that confrontation. Right. It seemed defiant, and like you somehow were turning yourself into the victim.
And it's not even like, was it Client Number 9? What was the movie about?
I love that.
Yeah, that was a good movie too.
Where there's this sort of organized cabal out to get him. It's like, no, he didn't need an organized cabal. He was his own
downfall.
worst enemy,
But there was more. But same thing with that's an Alex Gibney movie, and Elliot Spitzer has slightly more introspection, I thought, than Anthony Weiner. But both of them still need to.
I think with Weiner, you see a little bit of at least awareness. I wouldn't say that there's introspection, but there's at least
it's awareness.
He
I
won't
agree.
do the work. He knows it needs to be done.
Right. I mean, and I think that's
a mess. Somebody should clean it. Yeah.
there's a couple times in this movie where early on it's like this is a guy who is a narcissist, and he's reading that article where it's like, oh yeah, never met a camera he didn't like. Like there's a guy who he's very savvy about working the media, and he's very savvy about the glad handing, and he's got a lot of charisma, and you start to see as things are going farther and farther south, he does finally say like something to the effect of he knows he's making it worse, right? And there's that scene kind of during the credits where it's from the HBO show where
Real Time,
right?
Bill Maher,
where Bill Maher says something to the effect of like, new candidates live in an age where every aspect of their private lives is
social media, right?
social media, and he's like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
So he's like, bye, see you later. Time.
We should talk about Huma.
I was about to say the exact same thing just now. We gotta talk about
The
it.
most interesting moments in this movie relate to his wife.
Yeah.
It's so intimate, like it's so uncomfortable to watch because it's just the tension
Yeah.
is palpable.
I mean,
but she's a politician
And she's
too,
such a political
and
animal. Yeah,
she's
like
so brilliant. And she's so polished.
She's Hillary's sort of main advisor,
Yeah.
which in itself calls up some interesting stuff because
Right.
I saw this movie with my sister-in-law who had just finished listening to this audiobook of sort of psychoanalyzing Bill Clinton, and they used the word hypomanic. Like there's a sort of list of aspects that, a lot of it having to do with the never met a camera he didn't like, all that kind of stuff, that apply both to Clinton and to Weiner. And so they're both married to these women who married guys like that despite their own political ambitions, and who stay with guys like that despite their own political ambitions.
Or because of their political ambitions. They realize that they're maybe better as a team than they are individually,
Sure.
and they need each other. So Huma Abedin was smart to hook up with him in the first
No,
place.
it's just it's
also,
an interesting
how she
facet to discuss.
How she manages it and how she stands by him, and how even as polished as she is, even she can't maintain the facade for much longer.
No, and she won't.
You know,
she won't. She
in
won't.
that second press conference, she can't hide it how she's feeling.
And then there are moments when you just, I mean, you see her. How you doing? You okay? And she's like, mm-hmm. And she's like folded, and she's
giving up nothing.
Oh,
right,
she's
because
so,
at that point, like the documentary crew has been with them so long, they're right on the edge of forgetting they're there.
That's
Right?
right,
And
yeah.
so you
There's,
get to those
there's
points.
maybe 3 times where they kind of go into another room or make the doc people leave
Right.
to have a conversation, but for the most part, they're just there.
And then they have the kid too. Like he tries to use the kid to seem more, I don't know, human or accessible or not such a horrible asshole, and that doesn't work either.
No,
and
he's
he
not
goes
good at
trouble
it.
with
He's
that.
not-
Yeah.
he's
Right.
not-
And-
They're comfortable with it.
Well, and I think, you get halfway through this movie as things are, as the scandal is really unfolding and getting worse and worse, the moments between him and Huma are uncomfortable. And then by the end of the film, they're downright horrifying, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's that point where, there's that great scene where at one point they just sit and stare at each other for has to be 30 seconds. And then finally one of them's like, or Anthony says to the camera crew's like, can we have the room?
Yeah, I need. And it's not. And she's not. She didn't. None of this scandal, at least as far as I know, and I think the movie doesn't suggest otherwise. She sort of knew everything, right? It was just news to voters. Like he didn't go. He didn't go back to. He didn't. There's no suggestion, I believe, at any point that it was an extra lie to her.
Well,
it went on longer than people thought, and foolishly into 2013, the same year he runs. But we don't know when they were going to separate or not separate, and we don't know when he finally said, I'm done. I'm done.
And also, he never, as the movie points out, he never coerced anybody into anything. He never did anything physical with anybody.
He never
It was
the same
all
room
like
with these people.
Yeah, it was all like virtual, sexty, hot phone call stuff.
And then now Cindy Leathers has gotten a porn career for herself.
Yeah, well, that's it's worth mentioning because you talk about lack of self-awareness. I mean, there's a scene at the end where she is
chasing him
waiting
through a
to
McDonald's.
ambush him before a
having been kind of
campaign
prompted
party.
by Stern to go do that.
Prompted by Howard Stern to go do that, and she is, although I'm sure her publicists were all for it, and she's like, why is he so afraid of a 23-year-old? Why do you think, man? He's got a family. She is
right.
She is as loathsome a person as I've seen in a documentary, maybe in my life, and completely unaware of it. Like, I got it. He's got his own problems, and the voters rejected him for it. I'm glad he didn't quit, because he can't quit twice. Who knows in New York in 2021 whether this guy, I sort of like that he'll be able to say, I shouldn't have quit Congress. I'm glad I didn't quit the mayor's race. I hung in there till the end. You never, he's back, as we saw, making appearances. But Sidney Leathers, there's some loathsome behavior there and a total lack of self-awareness. Like she's somehow a victim here.
She's young and dumb and enjoying being famous for being famous.
Yeah. But man, do you get a slice of what New York politics is like?
Oh,
and there's I wrote in my notes here. I just thank God that moment where, as you'll see in the movie, where he sends Huma home or releases her from a sense of obligation.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm screaming at the TV. Let her go. She doesn't have to go. Let her go.
And I think that. Look, like, when's the last time we saw a documentary that has that level of emotional tension in it?
That's true.
I mean, it's
the shit hits the fan 2.0 meeting with like the top campaign staffers who were like directly betrayed about all this stuff. That was just
Barbara Morgan, who's his communications
so
director. I thought she was lovely. They were great. They were their own characters.
Right. I mean,
I just wish he'd opened up a little.
The kind of stuff that you see in Veep or in even House of Cards, like to see that play out in real life. Right, like there's lines in here, like you could almost pull some of the stuff that happens in here and put it in Veep, and you'd laugh at it. And to see it happen here, it's when Huma is asking him, when they're trying to go through the timeline, and you get the sense part of why the camera, at least I interpreted why he kicked the camera team out, was to kind of cop to her how long it had gone on, and he hadn't really been all that honest with her.
Right, maybe we don't know. I mean,
obviously that's speculation on my part, but.
Of course, these documentary filmmakers were going to ask her to sit down. What's interesting is that she didn't. And so in this movie about him and his scandal and the embarrassment that she has to face every time she walks down the streets of New York, and she's a public person, she's with Hillary, she's number 3 in the Hillary campaign now, that she somehow maintains her agency throughout this. Like the moments where she is not, when she's coming, she's like, yeah, I don't really think I need to be there today. And and that comes after stories are breaking that Hillary has told her, you know,
Right.
Stories I can't quite believe that it's that simple. Or Hillary would not, I don't think, have told her, pick one, him or me. And apparently she didn't, because she picked them both, and she stayed with Anthony, and she's worked for Hillary.
And still with him.
And she's still with him. Yeah.
Right, they're still married.
This story's not over.
I really admire, but it's hard not to admire her, like finding these brief moments of dignity when the New York press is sort of closing in on your entire world, and being able to, she somehow managed to stay above this, which is not easy. Anyway, really, 8.5.
Okay.
Only because he wasn't as revealing as I'd like.
Okay.
I give it a 9. I just found this really fascinating, and it just I've seen a lot of docs where people are given access and don't do anything with it, and this felt like they really got the most out of it.
9 from me too.
I give it a 10. It's perfect. I can't remember a doc this riveting.
Okay, so our number is a 9.1, and it's at 94%.
94%.
Yeah, I don't know where it's available, but go find it.
It's in limited but expanding release. It's been doing well so far, so I imagine it'll get out there.
Make sure to look for Weiner.
Bye. We waited so long for it to make a bad
This close to getting all the way through it.
Bye.